في كتير طرق وسط الحياة تاهوا فيها ناس، وطرق تبان مفروشة ورد وتنتهي بألم وضيق، لكن الطريق للفرحة وطريق الخلاص عند المسيح. أصل المسيح هو الحياة، هو الطريق. الطريق 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 الطريق
Welcome to The Way TV. Glad to be back on the air, and I understand we got new folks with channel 35.3. Wow, what a great thing. Hey, 2 months ago, 2 months ago, I was down on the Arizona border with a friend of mine. I'm a former Marine Corps officer and enlisted, worked intelligence in Vietnam, got quite a background, and I've been exposing the invasion of Islam in the United States for just days after when they blew up the World Trade Center back in 2001. I knew that the Muslims were coming across the border, the 1,900-mile-long border. I knew it was happening, and I got invited to go down to a observation post right on the border, talked with the Border Patrol, and lo and behold, that night we had night observation devices at our observation post. Everything we did was legal, ethical, and moral, no problems whatsoever on that. But we actually watched the infiltration during a driving rainstorm with lightning flashes all around us, 360 degrees for a number of hours. Watched them come right across the border. I'm not going to tell you where we were because I'm going back there again tomorrow. And now we know from Representative Congressman Duncan Hunter, himself a former Marine officer with a couple of tours in Iraq, that indeed ISIS has been identified, not only identified coming across the border, but they captured 10 of them 2 days ago coming across the border, and yesterday they captured 4. Now, ISIS really is no different from Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Mujahideen, Boko Haram, the guys there in Africa that kidnapped the little girls. They're all playing by the same playbook, by the Quran, and it's real simple. As a former enlisted working with intel in Vietnam, and then an officer with the Marine Corps working with intel with the infantry battalion, I understand how these folks work, and I also understand that they're all using the same rules of engagement as we use the Uniform Code of Military Justice in the United States military for all 4 branches of the military, and the 5th branch being the Coast Guard, of course. So I'm amused frequently when I watch the different channels, and yes, I do watch Al Jazeera, and yes, I do read the Quran, and no, I'm not an expert on Islam, but I am a specialist. I studied it. I've been to every major mosque in Southern California, one in Missouri, and I always have translators with me when we go to these mosques that are all funded by the Saudi Arabians, by the way. And we have all kinds of proof, evidence, and facts that the mosques in Los Angeles, in San Diego, in Missouri, in New York, in Dallas, in Georgia, in Seattle, in North Dakota, in Hawaii, and in Alaska too, and the territories, all the mosques that are funded by the Saudi Arabians, which is almost 100% of the mosques in the United States, all support ISIS because really, when you look at the Quran, it's real simple. As a Christian, I understand the Bible based on what did Jesus do. Whenever I read the Bible or any documentaries, any kind of writings on the Bible, I always put on my what did Jesus do glasses to look at it, to understand it. Under Islam, it's the same concept, and that is a good Muslim always looks to see what did Muhammad do. Muhammad, the white man, we have proof, evidence, and facts, the white man with black slaves. You don't believe me? Well, I will read right now from the Hadith the sayings of Muhammad. There came a slave and pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle Muhammad, may peace be upon him, on migration. He, the holy prophet, did not know that he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back, whereupon Allah's apostle, may peace be upon him, said, "Sell him to me." And he bought him for 2 black slaves, and he did not afterwards take allegiance from anyone until he had asked him whether he was a slave or a free man. It also goes on, that's from Sahih Muslim 3901, and it goes on and on. Also, proof that Muhammad was a white man. While we were sitting with the Prophet in the mosque, a man came riding on a camel. He made his camel kneel down in the mosque, tied its foreleg, and then said, "Who amongst you is Muhammad?" At that time, the Prophet was sitting amongst us. His companions leaning on his arm. We replied, "This white man reclining on his arm is Muhammad." That's from Volume 1, Book 3, number 63, and that is from Abdul Mutabli. I've been going through this stuff for years and years and years and years, and we have, as I say, repeatedly all kinds of proof, evidence, and facts that indeed all of the mosques in Southern California, Los Angeles in particular, are working hand in glove with the Muslim Brotherhood. And actually, next week, if you watch this show, next week I will show clips with LA Sheriff Baca, who's now evidently leaving office under jaded terms, and LAPD counterterrorism commander Michael Downing crowing and bragging that they think the Muslim Brotherhood is great. Well, frankly, the Muslim Brotherhood is extremely dangerous. The Muslim Brotherhood, their motto is based on Surah 860, that is, terrify the infidels and use your steeds of war, weapons of war, to kill the infidels, which you're seeing exactly what ISIS does. It is bizarre to me. I've been doing this now for years and years and years. I started, as soon as I saw the airplanes fly into the World Trade Center, I knew from my experience as both Marine Corps enlisted and Marine Corps officer that the planes couldn't have been flown into the World Trade Center without an international terrorist cell network. What I did in Vietnam was cell networking between the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army, virtually surrounded by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. Enough on that. It does suffice that I'm telling you right now, now we're having congressmen and people who are responsible, Border Patrol, coming out and saying, oh yes, ISIS has been coming across the border for a long time. Al-Qaeda, all of these different groups, they all play by the same rule book, and that is, what did Muhammad do? When they capture and behead women, when they rape and murder the ambassador to Benghazi, Ambassador Stevens, that's merely what did Muhammad do. Now, we have all kinds, again, of proof, evidence, and facts about these things from the Quran, the Hadith, the Sirah, the Sunnah, and the Sharia. I have personally been involved in a number of First Amendment federal lawsuits, and I've been in federal trial a number of times, less than 10 times. I really can't tell you how many times, because there was other ancillary cases too that I was involved in. And we've only lost one time, and that was on a technicality. But I do know that everything we do is with proof, evidence, and facts. And so I'm reading to you right now from Representative Duncan Hunter in an interview 2 days ago, and this is all memorialized. You can see it on TV. All you got to do is type in ISIS, ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIL. It doesn't matter. They're the same guys. They're playing into the same rule book, the Quran. And you can see it right there. Now, the proof that, or the stuff that the federal government has been denying, and the people on the border that I have met with and talked with and have confirmed this, now it's coming all the way from just a few levels down from the White House itself. Representative Duncan Hunter, Republican California, says that at least 10 fighters for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria have been apprehended while attempting to enter the southern U.S. border. Again, I was there 8 weeks ago. I'm going back again. I'll be there tomorrow night and Saturday night. I'll be with some very respected folks, very high-level official from New York, and also a friend of mine who is a retired diplomat from the State Department who worked with the CIA in fortifying embassies over in the Muslim countries. Very credible witnesses. Former Marine Corps officer, lots of experience in Vietnam, combat experience, held in highest regard. The California Republican claims that at least 10 ISIS fighters have been caught coming across the Mexican border. This happened in Texas. They've also come across the other states, too. Again, I'm not going to tell you where I will be in the border, somewhere on that 1,900-mile stretch. In a conversation with the news on Tuesday, Hunter says that the Islamic terrorists are slipping into the U.S. through the porous southern border, as several have already been captured. Now, I guarantee you, when I was on the border 8 weeks ago, 2 months ago, we had night observation devices. Yes, we were heavily armed. Yes, we were doing everything legally, moral, and ethically in the law in accordance with the Constitution of the United States and the local laws there, too. The Border Patrol knew we were there, and they had no problems with it whatsoever. We indeed did watch that night in the driving rain, in the rainstorm, with the heavy winds and the flashing lightning, and with night observation devices and very high-powered, sophisticated telescopes. We did watch these folks come across. Now, they could have been cartel, they could have been drug cartels, they could have been ISIS or Al-Qaeda or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, whom I also have folks who speak Farsi, and they live, and I meet with them once a year, and they confirm with me that members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard have come across the border on multiple occasions, and they have talked to them. So while we were there, we watched these folks come through, and I got to tell you, with all the experience I have in Vietnam, outside the wire for over 240 nights in a row as a young enlisted guy in charge of a group called Combined Action Program, doing the same identical job as the Green Berets. And I know a lot of you are scoffing. I always carry my DD-214s with me, and I also carry manuscripts with me written by different military historians, Army and Marine Corps, on what we did. And we did the same identical job as the Green Berets. And that's where I learned intelligence gathering as a translator and also a team leader in Vietnam, so that when I saw the planes flying to the World Trade Center, then immediately I went out to all of the different locations where I knew folks who were in the terrorist network were going every Friday. Gee, where would that be? Guess what? It was a mosque. And when I went to the mosque, I always had translators with me and police protection or deputy sheriff, so we always notified the authorities before we went out so that when we went and talked to these folks dressed like Osama bin Laden, we wouldn't get killed. It was very interesting, very fascinating. For years and years and years, many people thought I was a little bit kind of on edge, didn't really believe me, but now, with the advent of ISIS and with all the publicity that they're getting out there, murdering, killing, publicizing this as they do, crowing about it, which is exactly what did Muhammad do. He did the same thing. Now it's coming home to roost. Whereas people used to kind of say, well, yeah, that guy's, we don't really want to talk to him. Now I'm getting phone calls and messages from Europe, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, Holland, Spain, all over the place. I'm in direct contact with folks in Afghanistan at the highest level of the intelligence community, and you know what they're saying? They're saying, wake up, America. So now we have Congressman Duncan Hunter. You can't get much higher than that. He's a credible witness. He's a former Marine Corps officer. He goes on to say there's nobody talking about it. For some reason, we have the mentality of an ostrich. Now, I know this for a fact because the Marine Corps actually hired me, brought me back in as a consultant for what I did gathering human intelligence in Vietnam, literally surrounded by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. We wanted to know how we could not only survive but thrive, and not only survive and thrive, but we went out every night, night after night after night, using human intelligence that we gathered from the Buddhists, the local farmers in that area who did everything they could to get intelligence for us, and they did. And as a result, we were very, very successful. Marine Corps knew about that. General Mattis, referred to as Mad Dog Mattis, asked throughout the Marine Corps, anybody who knows of any surviving member, especially a team leader, which I was, of the Combined Action Program, he wanted to get a hold of that person and have them come down and brief the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. And a friend of mine, who was a full colonel at that time in the Marine Corps, we'd been second lieutenants together, got a hold of me, and I went down and did a presentation for the senior officers of IMEF, about 100, 150 of them. And they liked it so much that they actually hired me at $500 an hour to teach the Marines going over to the Battle of Fallujah 2. Okay, that just kind of identifies who I am, what I did, my credibility, my level of experience. And while I was actually there talking to the Marines, I began opening up to them and telling them about the porous borders and the Muslim Al-Qaeda types, ISIS types, Mujahideen, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard coming across the border. And they really didn't want to hear it. And I actually had quite a consultation with a full colonel who was very high-level battle planner for the Marine Corps. And I was chided, Mr. Klein, you can't talk about Islam or Muhammad in that fashion, because what I was doing was telling the local, or the Marines down there at IMEF, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, that the Muslims do battle planning in accordance with what did Muhammad do, because their battle plans are all based on what did Muhammad do. It's really simple. But it was very baffling to them, and the colonel, and forgive him, I forgive him for bowing down to the almighty dollar. But he said, Mr. Klein, we're not going to pay you the $500 an hour if you're going to continue to harp that battle planning in Islam is based on Muhammad, and then tell us these stories about Muhammad where, frankly, you make Muhammad sound lunatic. I said, no. I merely tell the truth with proof, evidence, and facts, which I get out of the Quran and the Hadith and the Sirah and the Sunnah, like the stuff about Muhammad being a white guy with black slaves. So all of you fellows and ladies who follow Louis Farrakhan and you continue to harp that white people are blue-eyed devils, etc. Well, guess what? Muhammad was a white dude, and he bought and sold black slaves. So while I was talking with the colonel, he said, hey, if you want to get your $500, you're going to have to toe the line. In fact, you're going to have to be politically correct. Now, that was way back in 2003. 2003. I like that $500 an hour. That works out to $80,000 a month, $960,000 a year, and I didn't have to prepare for class. All I had to do is go down there and tell stories about what I did in Vietnam, and then come back and try to apply it to what the Marines were going to do in Iraq. To which I said to him, well, frankly, sir, we're both battle planners, and we both know we got to start with know your enemy. And so if we know our enemy down there, we have to know what about our enemy. Well, our enemy is ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines. In China, they're called Uyghurs. In Europe, the Amirs of the Caucasus. And you can go around the globe. They're all global, and they all play by the same playbook. And when you see ISIS doing what they're doing, Al-Qaeda what they're doing, don't let the media fool you. Even Fox News is totally confounded and confused about it, and they will refer to it as radical Muslims. No, these are bona fide good Muslims. According to the Quran, 22 verses in the Quran, it says a good Muslim does what Muhammad did. And I will rattle off those verses after this first clip that I get to. And a good Muslim does what Muhammad did, just as a good Christian does what Jesus did. Real simple. Makes it real simple. Battle planning, always take the complex, reduce it down to the simple, keep it with facts, evidence, and proof, make it truthful. The full colonel down there, he said, hey, Mr. Klein, if you can't be politically correct, we're not going to pay the $500 an hour, and we're done. I said, well, okay, fine. If I can't tell the truth, then consider this. If I don't tell the truth, and some kids are in Iraq, and they get suicide bombed and killed because I didn't tell the truth, I can't live with that. The colonel wasn't very happy with me. He said, well, Mr. Klein, the Pentagon has commanded me that I have to be politically correct, and that means that if you want your $500 an hour, you're going to have to be politically correct, and you can't say what you're saying. So I said, in other words, you want me to lie. I'm saying this to a full colonel. Now, I'm a former Marine Corps officer. I can get away with it. I'm older than the guy. I can get away with it. I have a lot more combat experience than this guy had. I can get away with it. And so I did. But I stuck to my guns, and I said, with all due respect, you can keep your $500 because I can't go to bed at night knowing that you hired me to train Marines to go into war, but I lied to them by omission, by leaving out battle planning is based on what did Muhammad do? Adam, are we ready for the first clip? Okay. Now, my son is alive, but he was bombed, blown up, and I don't know how he survived, suicide bomber. He's had multiple operations. I don't know how he survived. But you know what? I told the truth. I told the truth. And in fact, I taught my son, and I told him, you will know you're going to get suicide bombed if these things happen. And after this clip, I will tell you what I taught my son and how he was saved from being killed in action. Another Army lieutenant was killed immediately, and how he saved 17 other people who were murdered by people who do what ISIS did. In fact, the people that blew up my son are the forerunners who became ISIS. They're the people that didn't surrender. Clip number 13.
Muslims rejoicing in the carnage. They call themselves the Revolution Muslim. Today on their website, they called the alleged shooter, Major Hassan, an officer and a gentleman. They said, quote, "We love you." At the same time, they called the slain soldiers terrorists who are in, quote, eternal hellfire. These men are radicals, but they are also Americans, believe it or not, who praise Osama bin Laden and celebrate the 9/11 attacks. So what's so extraordinary is that we found them out in broad daylight, out on the streets of New York, trying to spread their message just a few feet from a peaceful American mosque. Drew Griffin of CNN Special Investigations Unit has this Uncovering America report.
For 20 years, the Muslim faithful have been drawn to this gleaming mosque in the heart of New York. It is time for afternoon prayers. American Muslims and Muslims from overseas, as many as 4,000 visit here every day. They come to praise Allah, give thanks, and to pray for peace. Imam Shamsi Ali preaches against terror here, against the violence that right now sweeps many Muslim countries. But just outside the gates to his mosque, radical Muslims are preaching a very different view.
How big a threat are these people who come here, well, maybe here today, and trying to reach your congregation?
Islam is about peace. Islam is about moderation. Islam is about friendship. Islam opposes any kind of hatred against anybody.
These are the brothers of Revolution Muslim.
We tell you Muslims to rise up.
They are recruiting just outside New York's 96th Street Mosque.
That the Quran commands that you disavow and make hatred and enmity between democracy, between nationalism, between secularism, and that you see Obama as the enemy he really.
And very good job, Adam Ricky. Okay, now look, that was a long time ago. I think a lot of people are beginning to awaken. I think a lot of people, like my son, who listened to me and survived by listening to me, the suicide bomb blast, I think a lot of people are beginning to understand that a good Muslim does what Muhammad did. And a good Muslim from the Quran 33:21, and I'll go through the verses. In Islam, Muhammad is considered to be al-insan al-kamil, the ideal man or the perfect man. Muhammad, he is an excellent model of conduct. Quran 33:21. Certainly, in Quran 33:21, certainly you have in the messenger of Allah, Muhammad, an excellent exemplar for him who hopes in Allah and the latter day and remembers Allah much. Quran 68:4. Muhammad, he demonstrates an exalted standard of character. Quran 68:4 goes on to say that also. The Muslim's holy book instructs Muslims repeatedly to obey, to do what did Muhammad do. In the Bible, what did Jesus do? Under Islam, what did Muhammad do? Now really, having looked at this, seeing that CNN was totally fooled, buffaloed, hornswoggled by the first Muslim imam saying that Islam is peace and all this other stuff. Well, it is peace after, like ISIS, they kill you and chop off your head and they put it on to a pole. Now, I know a lot of people out there saying I'm hate-filled, and frankly, between my two social media networks, I probably reach 1 million people, maybe more. I don't know, 30, 40, 50 million. I know this TV show reaches a minimum of 70 million people globally, most on the internet, and now in Los Angeles, probably 80,000 people in the greater Los Angeles area. And I also know I have met face-to-face with Michael Downing, Commander, Counterterrorism, LAPD. Next week, I will show a video of him talking about how he loves the Muslim Brotherhood and that they have evolved into kinder, gentler people. And I have led demonstrations also against Sheriff Baca, because Sheriff Baca loves and works with the Ikhwan Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. I've been around. I've been there. So these are the verses from the Quran. This will be posted on my YouTube site Monday when I return back from Arizona, being there on the border. These are the verses in the Quran that tell a good Muslim to do what Muhammad did. And frankly, when you study Muhammad, and you can go to my YouTube site, Steve Klein, K-L-E-I-N, and you can email me, or you can go to my Facebook, Steve Klein, and you can see all the proof, evidence, and facts. Everything I use is out of the Quran, the Hadith, the Sirah, the Sunnah, and the Sharia. Quran, verse 332, verse 3, 132, verse 413, verse 459, verse 469, verse 592, verse 81, verse 820, verse 846, verse 971, verse 2447, verse 2451, verse 2452, verse 2454. Do what Muhammad do, verse 2456, verse 3333. Do what Muhammad did, verse 4733. Verse 49:14, verse 58:13, verse 64:12. Do what Muhammad do. Well, I'm going to tell you some graphic things. And I have all the proof, evidence, and facts. And you can go on and you can see them all right out of the Quran and the Hadith, the Sirah, and the Sunnah. Muhammad masturbated between the thighs of a 6-year-old girl, Aisha, his first wife. We have the proof, the evidence, and facts. And I know right now there are Muslims yelling and screaming and they want to kill me. Hey, get in line. There's already, Hezbollah already has a fatwa on me. You can type in my name, Steve Klein, K-L-E-I-N, comma, Benghazi, comma, fatwa, F-A-T-W-A. It's already there. Stand in line. I don't care. I'm not afraid. I didn't walk around for 9 years in the Marine Corps getting shot at in Vietnam, so I would quail and coward and grovel down before these people who think I'm a kafir. Oh, and by the way, kafir is Arabic for infidel. And in the eyes of Muhammad, an infidel is a dog or a pig or an ape. Okay, to my son. I had told my son before he went to Iraq, after he'd been to Afghanistan, then he had to go to Iraq. And I told him, son, we know for a fact that Saudi Arabia, yes, the same Saudi Arabia that Fox News and all these other news outlets say is our allies. By the way, the Saudi Arabians have funded global terrorism for a long time. Since 1973 in the Yom Kippur War, when you will remember, those of you who are my age, in Los Angeles or Phoenix or New York, you will remember the Yom Kippur War. Remember there was a gas shortage and we had to do odd, even license plates for going through the gas station to get our gas. Gas jumped all the way up to like, what, 75 cents a gallon? And we were mortified. Well, for Saudi Arabia, that was the first time they ever had surplus capital. As soon as they had surplus capital, what they did was, what did Muhammad do? They would take that surplus capital and they sent it globally to fund all of the Muslim terrorist groups in China, in Japan, in Korea, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Mexico, in Canada, in the United States, in Holland, in the United Kingdom, in Ireland, in Spain, in Italy, in Yugoslavia, in Kosovo, Albania, and Bosnia, all over the world. And it was very interesting. I found out from doing my studies, having worked with intelligence and doing what I did in Vietnam, I learned so much how to gather human intelligence, which I did by going out to the mosque and merely walking directly up to some guy in Southern California, Los Angeles, Riverside, San Diego, San Francisco, all over the place, Brea, just walking up to these guys who dressed like Osama bin Laden, talking with them, and I had Arabic-speaking translators with me. And I would just say, so why are you guys here? What are you doing? Tell me about Muhammad. Tell me, well, in Islam, you're not supposed to ask questions. Because if you ask too many questions, you're going to find out, what did Muhammad do? And frankly, Muhammad was insane. The word lunatic comes from the behavior of those who worship the moon. And again, I know a lot of you haven't heard this. You're yelling and screaming, saying this guy's hate-filled, he's a bigot, and all this other stuff. No. Proof, evidence, and facts. Proof, evidence, and facts. And for the ultimate proof, evidence, and facts, my son is alive today because he was able to recognize he was going to be suicide bombed and attacked, which he was. And what I had told him was, son, Saudi Arabia, he's going over to Iraq, son, Saudi Arabia is funding global terrorism, period. James Woolsey, the former leader of the CIA, in Freedom House, is an article. You can go online and read it today. It's PDF. Hate-filled ideology invades American mosques. And in there also, Jean-Charles Brissard, the #1 expert in the whole world on global terrorism funding, with a number, I think it was 17 pages of congressional testimony. He and others had noted that the Saudi Arabians, through Qatar, were paying bounties to the survivors of families of suicide bombers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the way they were paying was a sliding scale. The higher your rank, the more money would be given to the surviving members of the suicide bomber's family, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, whatever. So I told my son a number of times, look, if you ever hear anybody ask you, are you high rank or low rank, or anything of that nature of all, where somebody's trying to figure out what's your rank, the reason they're doing that is not to treat you respectfully. No. It's to find out they want to blow up the person of the highest rank, because the person with the highest rank, the family of the suicide bomber, gets the highest amount of money. That's how they work. So that morning, when my son went to the motor pool, one of the local Muslims walked up to my son and said, are you high rank or low rank? And my son went, oh my gosh, this is what my dad taught me. This is what he told me. So wisely, he alerted everybody in his unit. Sadly, the officers didn't listen to him. And later that day, probably 6 hours later, the suicide bomber did blow up and kill one of the Army officers immediately, but his helmet and flak jacket kept my son alive, because my son was moving around. Can you imagine playing tag with a suicide bomber? That's what my son was doing. It's a long story. But he was trying to get away from all of the people that he saw were suspects, and he knew his outfit had been infiltrated by Al-Qaeda through this silly political correctness. In fact, they threatened, his officer in charge of him threatened to arrest him, because my son was telling the soldiers, the U.S. soldiers, hey, we've been infiltrated by Al-Qaeda and we're going to get attacked. We're going to get suicide bombed pretty soon. And very shortly after that, they were. I always deal with proof, evidence, and facts as much as I possibly can. If I work with suppositions, it's an educated supposition, because the epistemology of battlefield epistemology is totally different than Perry Mason. I'm just going to say Perry Mason can work past tense and he can build on clues. In the future, the epistemology of the battlefield, where you're looking to the future, whether it's 20 seconds ahead, 20 hours, 20 days, 20 weeks, 20 months, 20 years, the epistemology is not, you don't have the ability to go back and say, okay, this clue proves this clue proves, you have the ability, history is prologue, those who do not know history are forced to repeat the mistakes, right? George Santayana. The epistemology of military intelligence is out of sync unless you understand that the courtroom epistemology of murder, they can go back and rebuild the scene of the crime. There is no crime in military intelligence. You're forecasting and using the best you can in suppositions. You're looking to history. You're looking to the Quran and the Hadith, the Sirah and the Sunnah and the Sharia to tell you what you can expect to happen. And as soon as my son heard the question, are you low rank or high rank, that's all the proof he needed, and that was it. That was it. So he was able to save 17 soldiers, only one was killed. Had he not listened to me, had he disregarded me, had he acted like the LA Sheriff Baca does with me, and the LAPD, Charlie Beck, and Michael Downing calling me a whack job or a nut job, had he acted that way, he and his men would have all been dead, killed, and we would have never known what happened. But now, I've worked extensively with him. I actually did investigation of the battle, Tactical Squad B. Very interesting. How did my son survive? He listened to me based on what I knew, that their battle planning is based on what did Muhammad do. And knowing Muhammad out of the Quran, that he was a child molester. He masturbated between the thighs of a 6-year-old girl. We have the proof, evidence, and facts. We have a fatwa. I have a fatwa here. The same legal decree that Hezbollah has against me to kill me in a fatwa is the same type of thing. A fatwa, by the way, is global or universal, and it's eternal until the fatwa is done, I'm killed, or I die. Does that bother me? No. Will I shut up? No. Only when I'm dead will I shut up. Now with ISIS and all the stuff that's coming out in the news, people are beginning to contact me. And thank God for the Way TV, Joseph Nasrallah, for Dr. Bruno and others who have come around and really gotten this station and channel up and going and moving. You will see in the United States, Canada, Western Europe, more beheadings like Oklahoma. You will see ISIS and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard come across more and more across the border. You will see sometime in the next 1 to 15 years all kinds of things, and they'll all come out of the center of the geological earthquake, the epicenter, the mosque. When the Marines asked me a number of questions before I quit, and I said, look, if you look to the mosque, everything comes out of the mosque because that's what did Muhammad do. And they will do their battle planning, they will do their reinforcements, they will do their reserves, they will do their hospital, their armory, their cash, they will do everything out of the mosque. And each one of the mosques in the United States and Europe and Canada is a forward operating base. We have proof, evidence, and facts. So when the Muslims reach 10% of the general population of a country, 100% of the Muslims will work together so that the tip of the spear, the ISIS or the suicide bombers, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, can go out, attack, murder, rape, kill, do all the things that you're seeing happening with ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Those who do not know history, those who refuse to know history, like Sheriff Baca and Michael Downing and Charlie Beck of the LAPD, are enabling and helping these folks. People like that full colonel who told me to omit the truth, lying. You can lie through commission or omission. He wanted me to lie through omission. I would not do it. You will see between 1 and 25 years, you will see these folks boil out. Now, right now in the United States, there's about 1%, maybe 1.5%. Of the United States population, 320 million people. So there's approximately 3.2 million of these Middle East Muslims who support ISIS, and there's all kinds of proof, evidence, and facts out there about that. You will see them get more and more aggressive as they grow by each percentile, and biologically, they can't be stopped. They're growing. The stuff, if you stay tuned and you watch this show, you will learn so much that when it finally does happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it because it's historical, what did Muhammad do? And as they grow biologically, which we can't stop, we can't go into the bedroom and stop them from reproducing, but as they go out and they multiply in numbers more and more, then you will see I'm correct. It was only a few years ago that surrounding Paris itself that they had 300 cities where they had multiple fires where the Muslims there attacked and burned up the cars and buildings and things of that nature. And now we have a terrible time in France, in the United Kingdom, no matter what David Cameron says, the UK Prime Minister stating that ISIS is not Islam. That's absurd, because ISIS is merely doing what did Muhammad do. Everything that ISIS does is what did Muhammad do? If you are able to handle me with this funny goatee and bushy mustache, you will learn so much to prepare you. Consider it an intellectual or a theological or a philosophical prepper course so that within 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, when they do finally en masse erupt and come out and start murdering, raping, and killing as they're doing in Iraq and Syria, you won't be surprised. You'll be ready. I have to tell you, with the woman being beheaded by the Muslim in Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago, I was surprised. I figured we were 5 to 15 years away from that, but Katie barred the door. Now that has been sped up. Next week, I will show a clip that shows percent by percent by percent how the Muslims become more and more aggressive, more and more dangerous. Those of you who are out there screaming and yelling that I'm a racist or a bigot, hey, Islam is not a race, it's a religion, it's a philosophy, it's a theology, it's not a race. So don't call me a racist. A bigot is someone who does mean things not based on facts, evidence, and proof. I have the facts, evidence, and proof. I have gone out multiple times to the mosques all over California, Missouri. I've gone out. I have talked multiple times to people dressed like Osama bin Laden. I have led hundreds of outreaches to high schools when passed out flyers about what did Muhammad do. I have talked scores and scores, hundreds and hundreds of times with the Muslims, and I've heard everything. On my social media, I am linked into 9,000 people all over the world, and I get thousands and thousands of emails, of hits, of views, and I'm hearing it all. And you know what? I have never lost a debate with any Muslim, and any Muslim at any level who wants to debate me, I will debate you, but the debate will be, was Muhammad the perfect man? What did Muhammad do? No takers. And all I do is use Quran, Hadith, Sirah, Sunnah, and just go through there. I get hundreds of notes from well-meaning Muslims who, frankly, from what I see, never read the Quran or the Hadith or the Sirah or the Sunnah. And every one of my replies always starts off with, thank you very much. I'm glad you want a dialogue. And everything that I do is in accordance with what did Muhammad do. And then I send them passages from the Quran and Hadith. It's very successful. Okay, I've spoken too much. Let us go to clip number, are you awake in there? Adam Amriki? Adam just became an American citizen, that's why I call him Adam Amriki. Now he's getting terrified. Well, now, why do people get terrified when Islam's a religion of peace? I ask people from time to time, why don't you go out to the mosque with me since you think they're so peaceful? Oh, no. Okay. All right, clip number 2, Ithnain, clip number 2.
اتهمت السعودية والقطر وتركيا بأنها تتعاون وتدعم داعش. إذا اعتبرنا داعش يعني كثير متشددة جدا وقد تشكل خطر أيضا على هذه الدول الثلاث، يعني كيف يمكن لتركيا وقطر والسعودية أن تدعم من يشكل خطر عليها مثلا؟
اليوم هناك زلزلة أرضية مخيفة في داخل البيت الملكي ومرعبة، لا سيما أيضا من الأمراء الصغار الذين قد اطلعوا على الأحداث الجارية من خلال الأحداث التي جرت في بلاد الشام ولا سيما في داخل الجمهورية العربية السورية، ولا سيما أيضا نجاح القائد بشار في الانتخابات وأداء القسم أيضا وصمود الجيش العربي السوري وأيضا صمود الجيش العربي السوري بمعاركه التي خاضها مع الإرهاب والإرهابيين. أنا أعتقد بأن المملكة السعودية بفقد الملك عبد الله سيكون هناك بعد فقد الملك عبد الله والله أعلم سيحل أبو بكر البغدادي في داخل المملكة السعودية، لأن المملكة السعودية صارت على ثم كلبك يأكلك، فدفعت ودعمت، وهناك أكثر من 1500 جمعية.
الكلب بشار وليس أبو بكر البغدادي.
أنت كلب يا سيد بلال، مع احترامي لك. أنا عز وجل أنا لا أقول على أبو بكر البغدادي هو شخصيا كلب، لكن
خلي بشار يسمك.
Okay, the guy with the big beard, he's a Wahhabi, he's a Saudi Wahhabi, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Abu Sayyaf, they're Sunnis. Sunnis. 95% of the Muslim believers are Sunni, about 4% are Shiite. The guy with the funny white hat, he's a Shiite. And then there's fragmentary, little different splinter Muslim groups, the Sufis and the Alawites, Bashar, the president of Syria. Now, to understand this, to make it really easy for you, keep it simple. The guy with the beard is Sunni. The guy with the hat is a Shiite. ISIS are Sunni. ISIS are Sunni with a beard. ISIS are Sunni with a beard. Sunni, ISIS is Al-Qaeda. ISIS is Taliban. ISIS is Boko Haram. ISIS is Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines. ISIS is the Uyghurs in China. ISIS is the Amirs of the Caucasus in Europe. And it goes on and on and on. ISIS, Sunni. Very important. In Syria, they're Alawites, if I'm saying that properly, which is one of the real small fragmentaries, 1% of the body of Muslim brotherhoods, and they align themselves with Iran and the Shiites. So the Syrian rebels in Syria are Sunni, ISIS. And you can see them yelling back and forth. The guy with the hat is a Shiite. The guy with the beard is a Sunni. They want to kill each other. And so the same thing is happening in Syria. You have the Syrian rebels, Syrian Free Army rebels. They're Sunni. They're the same guys as Saddam Hussein, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram. And they are fighting the Alawites / Shiites aligned with Syria and Iran. And by the way, Iraq now is led by the Shiites. Iran is Shiite. Okay, so you got two major groups, the Sunnis and the Shiites. So you got Syria, Iraq, Iran now are all working together as Shiites. ISIS is attacking Syria. ISIS is attacking Iraq, which has become Shiite because they are Sunni. Do you understand? It all does come back to, what does religion have to do with it? Well, it does. What did Jesus do? What did Muhammad do? Very fascinating, very interesting. I hope you're following this and understanding this. Now, the guy with the beard is Saudi Arabian, Wahhabi. Goes back a couple of hundred years ago. Not going to bother you with or bug you or confuse you with that. 100%, almost 100% of the mosques in the United States are Wahhabi, Saudi, ISIS, loving people funded by the Saudi Arabians. Okay. All right. That brings us to a mosque in Italy, but what you see in this mosque in Italy of Sunnis who support ISIS and support Al-Qaeda and support Taliban, ISIS, are Sunnis. And in this mosque, they're talking about killing all the Jews. So I know we have a lot of Jewish people in Los Angeles, thank God, and I'm glad they're here, because I love them. They're great. Okay. But again, what does religion have to do with it? What would Jesus do? What would ISIS and the Saudi Arabians and the Sunni Muslims do? Well, let's just watch. Okay. Clip number 3. Clip number 3.
فماذا عسانا ننتظر من قوم قلوبهم كالحجارة بل هي أشد قسوة. ماذا عسانا ننتظر من قوم أياديهم ملطخة بدماء الرسل والأنبياء فماذا عن العزل الأبرياء. ماذا ننتظر من قوم فقدوا الأدب مع الله فقالوا لموسى أرنا الله جهرة. ماذا عسانا ننتظر من قوم قالوا الله مغلولة غلت أيديهم ولعنوا بما قالوا اللهم أرنا فيهم ما يسرنا اللهم واحسن عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا واجعل طعامهم سما وهواءهم حما ونومهم غما.
All right, what you're seeing there, that's in Italy. But again, it's all coming from the same playbook, you know. It's like football's got its own playbook, baseball, basketball's got its own playbook. You understand. The same playbook for all of the different Sunni and actually the Shiite groups too. It's basically they all want to kill the Christians and the Jews. That's what Muhammad did. It's very simple to understand. So even though that's Italy, that's in 100% of the Saudi-funded mosques around the world. In Los Angeles, the mosque outside the LA Coliseum, the mosque in Corona, the mosque in Riverside, the mosque in San Diego, the mosque in San Francisco. Every one of the major mosques in the United States, almost 100% of them are funded by the Saudi Arabians, and they're all preaching and teaching the same thing. Kill the Jews, kill the Christians. Kill the Jews, kill the Christians. Now, I know for a fact that Sheriff Baca and the LAPD don't believe me. But again, I'm going to show them next week, and I'm with their own words, them talking, not me. Them talking, not me, that they love, Sheriff Baca, the LAPD, love the Muslim Brotherhood. And the spirit of the Muslim Brotherhood, you just saw it in that mosque. What did Muhammad do? The spirit of the Muslim Brotherhood is found in the Quran. It's Surah 860. And in their logo, they have the crossed swords, and they have at the bottom of it in Arabic, Surah 860, and they say the Quran is their constitution, and jihad, killing people, is their way of life. That's what a good Muslim would do. As we read those verses, those 22 verses in the Quran. Okay. Clip number 17, the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. Clip number 17.
This report contains graphic images. Viewer discretion is highly advised. There is a power moving through the desert of Syria and Iraq faster than any invading army or sandstorm. Their influence and wealth grow by the day. Their acts of extremism and terror grow by the hour. Join me, Avi Oren, as we explore the Wahhabi terrorist group known as ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, in this special edition of American Empire.
I only showed a few seconds because you heard them right there. The Wahhabi, Wahhabi, Wahhabi. Whenever you hear Wahhabi, think Saudi Arabia. Whenever you hear Saudi Arabia, do not think that they are our allies. Fox News, please wake up. Saudi Arabia is not our ally. Every time Steve Klein, fill up my car or truck with gasoline that comes from Saudi Arabia, I am funding terrorism. I know it. Can I stop it? No. Can I boycott gasoline? No. But I sure wish we could find alternatives to the Middle East. I think we have them. However, I also am convinced. I cannot prove it. Proof, evidence, and facts. I cannot prove it. But in the scope of military intelligence and looking to what I see, the symptoms and whatnot, I am convinced that Saudi Arabia is funding all of the different environmental groups to prevent us from being energy independent from Saudi Arabia. The stuff runs deep. It runs even in our churches. Rick Warren, a lot of you know Rick Warren. A lot of you love Rick Warren. Well, I'm going to show Rick Warren addressing the Islamic Society of North America, and this is a Saudi Muslim Brotherhood group. In fact, you can go to a Hudson Institute report called the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, and they've got proof, evidence, and facts. They show photographs of people in Southern California who are actively leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Council on American Islamic Relations are identified as members of the Muslim Brotherhood, unindicted co-conspirators of the World Trade Center conspiracy, Holy Land conspiracy, Muslim Student Association at USC, UCLA, UCR, UCI, Cal Berkeley, Stanford, Weber State, Arkansas, University of Arkansas, Razorbacks, Georgetown, all over the United States. Just go online. Type in Muslim Student Association, Muslim Brotherhood, or Council on American Islamic Relations, or Islamic Society of North America. We're going to watch Rick Warren come in now, and the lady with the scarf on is Ingrid Mattson, who converted to Islam, has a PhD in it, and she's going to introduce Rick Warren, who begins with Salam al-Malaikum. Basically, he surrenders. Clip number 18. Clip number 18.
Forces and support each other. So that, I believe, is a great model for American Muslims as well. I'm very much an admirer of Pastor Warren's organization, and also his great spirit of outreach. He has been someone who has increased his interfaith outreach in the last number of years, and many of us have very much enjoyed his compassion and kindness and wisdom when we've encountered him. So with that, I'd like to invite Reverend Warren to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum.
Have nothing to do with the evil works of darkness. I have no idea why he wants to go and address the Muslim Brotherhood who support ISIS. What did Muhammad do? Muslim Brotherhood, just Google them, go online, check out, put in motto or logo of Muslim Brotherhood. Wikipedia comes right up. It's 100% accurate. 100% accurate. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased that you have listened. I know that the things that I say sound novel, a little crazy sometimes, a little edgy. I've been doing this for a long, long time. I have a degree in political science, political theory, the development of Anglo-American common law. I'm just turned in my dissertation, 240 pages long, about the difference between Christian battle planning and Islamic battle planning, which I believe flows right out of the Bible, Romans 13. I have all kinds of proof, evidence, and facts, having gone frontline and spoken face-to-face with men who look just like Osama bin Laden, have been surrounded by up to 250 Somali Muslims at 54th and University, the mosque in San Diego, chanting Allah Akbar, and they wanted to kill us. Thank God we had police there. But if you watch this show, you can see as things unfold and you start to see the violence of the Muslims grow more and more. And sadly, with the aid of Rick Warren, the LAPD, Charlie Beck, and Michael Downing, with the LA sheriffs, Sheriff Baca and his new replacement, from what I can tell, is just as sympathetic to loving the Muslim Brotherhood as Sheriff Baca. Next week, I will show a number of clips of American leaders, including Marine Corps generals, sheriffs, police, bowing down, Salam al-Malaikum, to the Muslim Brotherhood. Thank you for watching, and until next week, adieu.
في كتير طرق وسط الحياة